Cannibalism is one of the most extreme behaviors recorded in human history, long before agriculture, before cities, and before the modern concept of morality. Early humans inhabited harsh, unpredictable environments where survival was a daily challenge. In this context, cannibalism was not merely a taboo, it was a documented strategy, sometimes a necessity, sometimes a cultural practice. Archaeological discoveries across Europe, Africa, and Asia reveal that early humans engaged in consuming their own species for a variety of reasons that intersected biology, environment, and social structures. From a biological standpoint, humans have long been opportunistic omnivores. Early humans faced extreme environmental pressures. Ice Age glaciations, droughts, and resource scarcity frequently forced groups to exploit every possible source of calories. In these conditions, other humans represented both a readily available and highly caloric source of sustenance. This intersection of biology, environment, and social necessity makes cannibalism a lens through which researchers can study survival strategies, group behavior, and the evolution of human morality. Understanding prehistoric cannibalism is not about sensationalizing the past. It is about analyzing the boundaries of human adaptation. Every cut mark, every fractured bone, and every trace of fire on human remains provides insight into how our ancestors survived, competed, and coexisted. It is a record of a species negotiating extreme conditions, revealing the stark realities that shaped human evolution. Cannibalism in prehistoric humans occurred under multiple overlapping pressures, and understanding these reasons requires examining the environmental, cultural, and psychological contexts of early human life. Survival was the most immediate factor. Early humans lived in environments where food availability fluctuated dramatically. During periods of famine, drought, or extreme cold, access to large game could disappear entirely. Archaeological evidence shows that when conventional food sources were scarce, human bodies became a supplemental source of calories. Cut marks on bones and signs of marrow extraction indicate that early humans selectively consumed the most calorically dense parts of the body, such as the brain and bone marrow, suggesting calculated nutritional strategies rather than random consumption. Environmental stress alone does not account for all instances of cannibalism. Ritualistic and cultural motivations also played a significant role. Many prehistoric societies appear to have incorporated the practice into spiritual or social frameworks. In some cases, consuming deceased relatives was a form of ancestor veneration, a way of internalizing the strength or essence of the departed. Other examples suggest that human flesh was consumed as part of initiation rites or ceremonies that reinforced social hierarchies. Bones processed in systematic ways, defleshed, filleted, or burned, point to intentionality beyond simple survival. These practices were not anomalies, but repeated behaviors, implying that cannibalism could carry symbolic or societal significance. Anthropological studies provide further insight into the psychological dimensions of prehistoric cannibalism. Early humans were highly social, cooperative creatures, and the decision to consume a fellow human was likely influenced by group dynamics, hierarchy, and learned behaviors. In some cases, it may have functioned as a tool of social control or deterrence, reinforcing dominance or punishing transgression within a tribe. Observations from modern and historical indigenous populations demonstrate that the motivations for cannibalism often combined practical and symbolic factors, blurring the line between necessity and ritual. Curiosity and opportunism also contributed in some contexts. Humans are naturally investigative and adaptive, and archaeological evidence shows instances where bones were processed without immediate survival pressure, suggesting experimentation or ritualized consumption. This aspect underscores the complexity of early human behavior. Cannibalism was not solely a desperate act, but a behavior shaped by evolving intelligence, culture, and environmental awareness. In sum, cannibalism among prehistoric humans was a multifaceted phenomenon. Environmental scarcity created conditions for survival-driven consumption, while cultural and ritualistic frameworks added layers of symbolic meaning. Psychological and social factors influenced when, how, and why humans were consumed. By studying these patterns, researchers can reconstruct not only the physical actions of our ancestors, but also the social and cognitive landscapes in which these extreme behaviors emerged. The earliest evidence of human cannibalism comes from the meticulous study of fossilized remains and archaeological sites across Europe and Africa. One of the most significant discoveries is the Atapuerca site in northern Spain, dated to approximately 800,000 years ago. Here researchers uncovered bones of Homo antecessors showing systematic cut marks on the limbs and skulls, consistent with flesh removal and marrow extraction. The precision and consistency of these marks indicate deliberate processing rather than random scavenging by animals, providing some of the first clear evidence that humans intentionally consumed other humans in prehistory. Another crucial site is Gough's Cave in the United Kingdom, where human remains from around 14,700 years ago display signs of both cooking and disarticulation. Bones show filleting marks, percussion fractures, and polishing consistent with use as tools or utensils. Researchers concluded that individuals were processed for both consumption and practical use, illustrating how multifaceted cannibalism could be. Similarly, at the Falkland Cave and Moulagurt sites in France, Neanderthal bones exhibit cut marks and crushing patterns consistent with deliberate butchering. These findings reveal that cannibalism was not limited to Homo sapiens but was practiced across multiple human species, including Neanderthals and their contemporaries. The methods used to identify cannibalism are highly precise. Anthropologists examine microscopic cut marks, percussion fractures, and burn patterns on bones. Cut marks differ depending on whether flesh was removed for consumption or for ritual purposes. Bone breakage often targets the most calorically valuable parts, such as the skull and long bones for marrow. In some cases, the edges of broken bones show polishing from repeated handling, suggesting repeated use over time. Combined with radiocarbon dating and stratigraphic analysis, these techniques allow scientists to reconstruct not only the act of cannibalism, but also the social and environmental conditions surrounding it. Significant evidence also comes from African archaeological sites, where early Homo sapiens remains show similar cut marks and processing techniques. Sites like Classy's river mouth in South Africa reveal patterns of flesh removal and marrow extraction dating back at least 120,000 years, emphasizing that cannibalism was a recurrent behavior in multiple regions. These findings challenge assumptions that early humans were exclusively hunters or gatherers, showing instead that survival strategies included consuming members of their own species when conditions demanded it. The fossil record thus provides a detailed, tangible account of prehistoric cannibalism. Each cut mark, broken bone, and burnt fragment offers insight into the extreme pressures faced by our ancestors, their ingenuity in survival, and the cultural frameworks that sometimes guided their actions. This evidence forms the foundation for understanding the methods, motivations, and social dynamics that will be explored in the following sections. Prehistoric cannibalism was rarely random or chaotic. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that early humans employed systematic methods to process human bodies, often reflecting an understanding of anatomy, caloric value, and practical efficiency. Across multiple sites, bones reveal cut marks, percussion fractures, and burn patterns, indicating carefully orchestrated preparation, consumption, and disposal. These patterns suggest that cannibalism, whether for survival or ritual, was deliberate, methodical, and in some cases repeated over generations. One of the most consistent findings is the removal of flesh from long bones and skulls. Cut marks along the femur, humerus, and ribs indicate filleting with sharp stone tools. In many cases, the marks are similar to those found on animal carcasses, demonstrating that early humans approached their own species with the same butchering techniques they used for prey. The skull often shows precise fracturing to access the brain, which is calorically dense and nutrient-rich. In some cases, the cranial bones were deliberately broken with hammerstones or other tools to extract the entire brain, a practice documented at sites like Gough's Cave in England and Grandolina in Spain. Marrow extraction is another recurring pattern. Long bones were cracked or chopped to access the fatty marrow inside, often with repeated percussion strikes that left distinctive wedge-shaped fractures. These marks are markedly different from damage caused by predators, indicating purposeful human intervention. Archaeologists interpret this as an efficient method of maximizing caloric intake, suggesting that prehistoric humans recognized which body parts offered the greatest nutritional value. Cooking was also employed in some cases. Evidence from charred bones shows exposure to fire, sometimes after the flesh had been removed from the skeleton. This indicates that meat was roasted or boiled, and in some cases bones themselves were used as cooking vessels or tools. At sites like Moula Gursi, fragments of human bones show polish and wear consistent with repeated handling and processing, hinting at systematic culinary practices rather than a one-time act of desperation. In addition to survival-driven processing, some bone modifications suggest ritualistic or symbolic methods. Cut marks on certain bones appear in repetitive patterns, sometimes confined to specific body parts, implying that the act of consuming humans could carry cultural significance. In some cases, skulls were carefully defleshed and broken, possibly as a form of ancestor veneration, trophy keeping, or social signaling. These behaviors indicate that early humans distinguished between bodies processed for nutrition and bodies treated according to cultural norms, blurring the line between survival and ritual. The tools used were primarily stone implements, including flakes, scrapers, and hammerstones. Sharp edges facilitated precise cuts for filleting and disarticulation, while heavy stones were used to break bones cleanly. Some sites even show evidence of repetitive patterns across multiple individuals, suggesting shared knowledge of preparation methods within groups. The combined evidence from cut marks, bone breakage, burning, and polishing reveals a highly organized approach to cannibalism. Early humans were not indiscriminate. They applied knowledge, skill, and efficiency in every step, from removing flesh and extracting marrow to cooking and handling bones. Understanding these methods provides crucial insight into the physical, social, and cultural dimensions of cannibalism in prehistoric life, demonstrating that this extreme behavior was intertwined with survival strategies, ritual practices, and the cognitive abilities of our ancestors. Cannibalism in prehistoric humans can generally be categorized into two broad types, survival-driven and ritualistic, each reflecting distinct motivations and practices. Understanding the differences helps explain why this behavior persisted across time and species, from Homo antecessor to Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. Survival cannibalism occurred primarily under extreme environmental stress. Ice Age glaciations, droughts, or famine could decimate food sources, leaving humans with no alternatives. Archaeological evidence shows bones with cut marks concentrated on the most nutritious parts, such as long bones for marrow and skulls for brains, suggesting a calculated approach to obtaining essential calories. Sites like Gox Cave in the UK and Clausies River mouth in South Africa reveal systematic defleshing and bone breaking that align with survival strategies rather than symbolic behavior. In these cases, cannibalism was a practical, necessity-driven response to life-threatening conditions. In contrast, ritualistic cannibalism reflects social, spiritual, or cultural motivations. Certain prehistoric sites show patterns that go beyond nutrition. Repeated cut marks on specific bones, selective burning, or careful disarticulation indicate symbolic or ceremonial processing. For example, some skulls were deliberately defleshed and broken in a consistent manner, suggesting practices that might have reinforced social hierarchy, ancestor veneration, or group cohesion. Anthropological parallels in later historical societies, such as the Fore tribe of Papua New Guinea, show that consuming deceased kin was integrated into belief systems and ceremonial rites, even in the absence of starvation. The distinction between survival and ritual cannibalism is not always clear-cut. In some cases, nutritional and symbolic factors overlapped. Prehistoric humans could consume human flesh for calories while simultaneously adhering to social or ritual norms that guided which individuals were eaten, how they were processed, and which body parts were prioritized. Bone analysis often helps distinguish these motivations. Cut marks confined to high-calorie areas like marrow-rich bones generally indicate survival, while patterned, repeated modifications on specific skeletal elements suggest ritualistic intent. Modern research emphasizes that both forms of cannibalism reflect adaptive strategies. Survival cannibalism illustrates the lengths humans went to endure extreme conditions, revealing cognitive planning, anatomical knowledge, and dietary flexibility. Ritual cannibalism, meanwhile, demonstrates early humans' capacity for symbolic thought and social complexity, showing that even extreme behaviors were embedded in cultural frameworks. By examining these distinctions, scientists can reconstruct not just the physical actions of early humans, but also the social and environmental pressures that shaped them. The evidence shows that cannibalism was not a single, isolated behavior, but a recurring practice with multiple underlying motivations, each reflecting the interplay between biology, environment, and culture. Cannibalism left a profound impact on the social and emotional structures of prehistoric human groups. Beyond its immediate survival or ritual function, consuming members of one's own species influenced relationships, social norms, and the development of taboos that would persist for thousands of years. Anthropological and archaeological research indicates that the act was never socially neutral. it carried consequences for cohesion, hierarchy, and moral frameworks within early communities. In small hunter-gatherer groups, trust and cooperation were essential for survival. The decision to consume a member of the group could trigger fear, suspicion, or even ostracization. Some evidence suggests that individuals involved in ritualistic cannibalism may have been accorded elevated status or specific social roles, while survival-driven instances could create lasting psychological stress. Over time, early humans appear to have distinguished acceptable contexts, such as survival during famine or ritualized ceremonies, from acts considered morally or socially unacceptable. These distinctions are visible in the archaeological record through selective treatment of remains, differential processing, and burial practices that excluded certain individuals from consumption. Psychologically, cannibalism had complex consequences. While survival cannibalism may have alleviated immediate hunger, it could induce trauma, stress, and long-term social tension within a group. Ritualistic cannibalism, conversely, may have reinforced social bonds, collective identity, or the authority of leaders or shamans overseeing ceremonies. Modern studies of anthropological analogs demonstrate that societies practicing ritual consumption often incorporated extensive rules and cultural norms to mitigate potential conflicts or emotional strain. Cannibalism also affected intergroup relationships. The threat of being eaten by rival tribes could serve as a deterrent in conflicts or as a tool of intimidation. In some contexts, the presence of human processed bones acted as a signal of dominance, deterring aggression or asserting control over resources. These behaviors indicate that cannibalism was not only a nutritional or spiritual act but also a social strategy, entwined with power dynamics and survival in a competitive prehistoric landscape. The social and emotional consequences of cannibalism illustrate how extreme survival strategies influence the evolution of human morality, taboos, and group cohesion. By studying cut marks, burial patterns, and cultural analogs, researchers can trace the ways early humans navigated the tension between biological necessity and social complexity, revealing that cannibalism shaped not only the physical but also the psychological and cultural development of our species. While survival and ritual provide the primary explanations for prehistoric cannibalism, evidence suggests that some instances were driven by curiosity or experimental behavior. Early humans were highly adaptive and inquisitive, constantly exploring their environment, tools, and even the limits of social and physical experience. Archaeological records indicate that, in certain contexts, humans processed other humans in ways that cannot be explained purely by nutrition or ceremony, suggesting that curiosity played a role in these extreme behaviors. At some prehistoric sites, bones exhibit cut marks and processing patterns that do not correspond to optimal caloric extraction. For example, partial defleshing or selective removal of non-nutritive tissue indicates an interest in the act itself rather than in survival. In some cases, only specific body parts were processed repeatedly across multiple individuals, hinting at experimentation with techniques, tools, or preparation methods. Sites like Grandolina in Spain and certain layers at Gough's Cave reveal repeated manipulations that are unlikely to have been strictly necessary for nutrition, supporting the interpretation that early humans sometimes approached cannibalism as a form of experimentation or learning. Curiosity-driven cannibalism may also be linked to social observation and learning. Young or less experienced members of a group could have been exposed to the preparation of human remains to learn butchering techniques, tool use, or anatomical knowledge. These behaviors would have served a practical function in terms of skill transmission, while simultaneously introducing an exploratory dimension to human interactions with other bodies. Anthropological parallels in historic and ethnographic contexts support the existence of curiosity or experimentation as a driver for cannibalism. Certain documented societies occasionally engaged in the consumption of human flesh in controlled non-survival contexts, often as a way of exploring limits, testing reactions, or understanding body parts. Although these cases are rare, they provide insight into the cognitive capabilities of humans in prehistory, demonstrating that cannibalism was not solely reactive to environmental or ritual pressures. The evidence of curiosity-driven cannibalism also emphasizes the cognitive complexity of early humans. To engage in such behavior required planning, knowledge of anatomy, and the ability to observe cause and effect. This form of cannibalism was not random violence, it was a calculated investigative act that contributed to the broader understanding of food sources, tool efficiency, and social practices. Ultimately, instances of cannibalism motivated by curiosity highlight the experimental nature of prehistoric human behavior. Alongside survival and ritual, it represents a third layer of interaction with human flesh, revealing that early humans were capable of exploring the boundaries of social norms, anatomical knowledge, and resource utilization in ways that shaped both their biological and cultural evolution. Technological advances have also expanded understanding. Isotopic analysis and DNA testing can now confirm that cut-marked bones belong to humans, and even determine the age, sex, and dietary background of victims. Radiocarbon dating places cannibalistic practices within specific timeframes, providing context about climate, migration, and resource scarcity. Comparisons across sites show that cannibalism was not isolated to one species or region. Both Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens engaged in it, underlining its role as a recurring adaptive behavior. Finally, the science of cannibalism challenges modern assumptions about morality and human nature. It reveals that extreme behaviors were part of survival strategies shaped by biology, environment, and culture, and that our ancestors' decisions were rooted in the harsh realities of prehistoric life. Each cut mark, each fracture, and each burned fragment is a piece of evidence documenting the limits early humans faced, their problem-solving skills, and the interplay between necessity and social structure. The study of prehistoric cannibalism offers a profound perspective on human survival, adaptation, and the evolution of culture. Across hundreds of thousands of years, early humans navigated extreme environments, faced unpredictable climates, and developed behaviors that balanced necessity with social and ritual frameworks. Cannibalism, as disturbing as it may seem, provides crucial insight into how our ancestors responded to scarcity, competition, and mortality. Archaeological evidence from cut-marked bones to skull cups demonstrates that cannibalism was deliberate, methodical, and sometimes culturally embedded. Survival cannibalism reflects the practical realities of life in harsh conditions. Targeting marrow-rich bones and nutrient-dense organs ensured that energy was maximized when food was otherwise unavailable. Ritualistic cannibalism, meanwhile, reveals the cognitive and social complexity of early humans, showing that even extreme behaviors could be structured by symbolic meaning, hierarchy, or spiritual belief. Studying these practices also illuminates the development of social norms and taboos. Prehistoric humans negotiated the tension between survival instincts and social cohesion, establishing rules around who could be eaten, when, and how. These early frameworks foreshadow the moral and ethical systems that would eventually shape human societies. Furthermore, instances driven by curiosity highlight the experimental and investigative nature of human behavior, demonstrating that our ancestors were not only surviving but also exploring the boundaries of their knowledge and capabilities. Ultimately, cannibalism in prehistory is a testament to the extreme pressures our species endured and the ingenuity with which early humans met them. Each cut mark, fractured bone, and burn pattern is more than evidence of consumption. It is a record of adaptation, strategy, and cognition. By examining these traces, we gain a clearer understanding of the environmental, biological, and social forces that shaped humanity. The story of prehistoric cannibalism challenges modern perceptions of human behavior. It reveals that survival sometimes demanded acts that seem unimaginable today, and that culture, intelligence, and ritual coexisted with the raw necessities of life. These lessons resonate far beyond the past, offering insight into human resilience, adaptability, and the complex interplay between biology and society. Thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, stay curious.